the psychology is another thing I want to ask you about, being a lighter heavyweight in a company of giants,
Right.
and how you not only survive but thrive. The psychology of that was fun for him to be part of on commentary.
Yes.
The rooting for somebody, and they're you being one of the few who could find a way.
Right. Well, I was always very open-minded, and still to this day, to listen.
Yeah.
Whether he has more years on top of my experience or less years, if there's a suggestion and or an opinion on how the match should go in a certain direction, I'm all about it. And at that time, especially entering WCW, I was being guided the majority of the times on how to work this particular American style.
Yeah.
Coming from everything being so fast, no count-outs, and just doing whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. So the first one to teach me that was Dean. Dean was just incredible at just putting pieces together, and I would tell him, I would love to do this, where can we throw this in? And that's how I started learning how to kind of just put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
You know, but Dean was a very fundamental key on the uprising of my career in WCW.
Yeah.
With the very first match, thinking that now I know what a dark match is or a tryout match.
Sure.
Back then, I didn't know what a tryout match. So what it was, me going in to do my first wrestling show for WCW, I'm thinking, yeah, they're gonna probably throw me in before the pay-per-view starts. And this was Bash at the Beach, Washington, Baltimore, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm sure we're probably gonna be the first match opening the show, and then obviously they're gonna lead into the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
No, it was the first match on the pay-per-view, and I literally started to panic in a good way. So I was like, oh shit, I've never wrestled Dean before. I studied him, tried to pick up a little bit on what he did, but the connection was instant, and I felt like I was very easy to adapt with whoever it was that I was stepping in the ring with, and that really gave me a lot of confidence to eventually wrestle a Regal. Later on in WWE, a Kurt Angle. Like it was, I guess, the passion and the love that I have for this sport that just made me blend in with whatever style that was brought up to me at the time, which is so cool.
It's so funny you brought up Dean. There's a synergy here to Dean. One time was in the ring teaching all of us just a house show, a live event, and he said something because somebody was asking about calling spots. He said something I'll never forget. He says, you don't always have to call spots.
Right.
If I hook you like this and throw my arm here, I'm gonna suplex you. Like he said something about the connection, the physical. If I've got you, you know you know where we're going. If I tuck you in like this, you're at least, if there's 3 routes here, you know what those 3 routes are. And I always thought that's genius because really the idea of just counting on your person to be professional and have enough in the bank to know I could do this, I could do this, I can just reverse out of it, whatever it may be, instead of yelling it or speaking in carny or whatever it may be. And I thought, I don't think that's a thing that's taught, which is wild to me. Here you are going to this pay-per-view match, and that's somebody that, because when you have chemistry with somebody, you want to work them all the time.
Yeah.
I won't say who because this was just recent, but I just wrestled somebody on TV where right away I thought, ooh,
this is special.
This is special. And and I wanted to let as many people know as I could.
Right.
And we're not doing live events anymore, no, but still the nature of being in there with someone who gets me or we just have we're clicking.
Right.
And you and Dean, absolutely.
It's crazy going back and just thinking about those moments or that first stage of being able to work with him. It's like, wow, like we really created magic, which I felt at the time I hadn't jumped to many opponents The only opponents that I really had a good connection was Psychosis, which was the number 1, Juventud Guerrera, which was number 2.
Movie.
And to me, another guy that I connected with was Heavy Metal, Negro Casa's younger brother. You know, besides that, I would have good matches, decent matches with other wrestlers, but Mexico was so used to doing 3 versus 3, 2 versus 2.
Yeah.
Single matches were only for a title, a mask versus mask, or a hair versus mask. So you didn't get to see many of those single matches.
Yeah.
So you connected with pretty much whoever was in front of you of the 3 opponents. But here, going into WCW, was the majority were single matches.
Yeah.
And that's what really kind of opened up my confidence to be able to trust other wrestlers on a one-on-one.
Sure, and I feel like there's just from an observation standpoint, because I watch so much of wrestling throughout the day, and that's an era that we were all into it. But it's very fun to watch an incredibly young adult crowd,
right?
Like college age, whereas today it's so many young kids and families. That Attitude Era, Monday Night Wars peak, that WCW run, NWO run, is a lot of college age, rowdy, with a bit of ignorance in not a negative way, but they're just coming to have a good time.
Right.
And it's very fun to see people that perhaps they had no idea were wrestling absolutely take the crowd on a ride. Dean powerbombing a dude, powerbombing you maybe, coming off the ropes and getting a near fall that it's like they took the opportunity that was in front. All of you took this opportunity, because that era is obviously clearly talked about so much with what happened with the cruiserweights and what happened, but that couldn't, there's a chance that that doesn't happen if you don't have the right people. There's a chance that I don't like this, you know, and instead, instantly, Ultimo Dragon, you, Eddie, like it's, what a class of people. That's why I wondered what it's like, or what it was like backstage for that when you're in that company, and is it a chip on the shoulder? Is it more of a confidence and having fun? Is it learning? Was it incredibly pressure filled?
I think from my point of view, I think because of what you just said, of fans maybe going in to see what the NWO was doing at the time, you know, we slowly started capturing that audience to become like more and more focused, not on what was happening with the NWO, but what was happening in that cruiserweight division. All these guys that were coming in with masks. But from my point of view, I think it was more of, let's go out there and let's go have some fun. Let's go do what we love to do. I've always went out thinking I'm putting everything out there.
Yeah.
Like whatever it is they can let me do, I'm gonna put it out there. So it was always very enjoyable. And obviously you knew with who you can really let yourself go.
Yeah.
And obviously Eddie was one of them. Jericho was another. Dean. You know, overall, that whole division, Dragon, we would go out there and just put on really good matches. The psychology wasn't quite there all the way yet, but we were all learning in the process, you know, and I learned so much from all the guys that I just mentioned over the years on how to eventually start toning it down. But I think that happens to everyone. When you're on the rise, you're just willing to do and take whatever to go out there and entertain, right? And that was my case back then.